Welcome to Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. I'm Dr. Amy Cooper-Smith, a doctorate-prepared nurse practitioner, and this show is about empowering you to live a radiant, healthy, and balanced life. Today, we're going to discuss a topic that I'm asked about every single day, and that's what should I eat? There are so many approaches out there. It can be overwhelming to figure out what actually works. In this episode, we'll break down the most talked about diet types, their pros and cons, and then we'll talk about my personal framework that helped my patients lose weight and feel good. Then we'll talk about some recent diet trends. What are they about? So whether you're trying to lose those stubborn 10 pounds or you're in a place of metabolic burnout, you're in the right place. So let's start with the ketogenic diet. Most people have heard of keto. This is a very low-carb, high-fat diet. It's designed to put your body in a state of ketosis where you burn fat for fuel. Ketosis is a metabolic state your body enters when it doesn't have enough carbohydrates, and instead it starts to break down fat for energy. A typical ratio on the keto diet is about 75% fat, 20% protein, and 5% carbs. So here's how it works. Normally, your body uses glucose from carbs to make energy. When your carbs are very limited, glucose stores are depleted. They're low. Then your liver will convert fat into ketone bodies. And these ketones are the primary fuel source for your brain, muscle, and other tissues. So the pros of this type of diet, it's shown to be very effective for weight loss and blood sugar control. It can stabilize blood sugar because you don't have that constant insulin release from your pancreas. It decreases hunger. Just to review, when you do eat a carb or a high sugar, then your pancreas is going to respond by making insulin, and that's what it does. But sometimes that insulin response can make you store fat. So by eating keto, you're just decreasing that, and people tend to do better. Some people report improved mental clarity on this type of diet as well. Also, because higher fat foods are more palatable, they taste good, people find it easier to eat. They like it. This diet was started back in the 1920s for the management of epilepsy. So basically, when the brain is using ketones for energy, as it does in the keto diet, it's going to reduce that neuronal excitability, and it keeps things just more steady. And so the brain is less likely to go into seizure mode. There's also some evidence that this diet's good for cancer patients. Cancer cells love sugar. So the theory is that depriving these cells of sugar helps slow down the growth of the cancer. Now, the cons. It can increase cholesterol, and it's unclear long-term what this can do to someone. We know now that when it comes to cholesterol and its effect on your health, it's not just the number. It's more about inflammation. So we don't know yet how much this affects your heart health and so forth. Sometimes that initial weight loss is just water and muscle loss rather than fat, and so we don't want that. It can be difficult to maintain long term, and it can cause some nutrient deficiencies because we're restricting certain foods. It also might not be ideal for people with adrenal or thyroid issues. So my opinion, I like common sense keto. So it doesn't make sense to eat a bunch of bacon and cheese and a lot of saturated fat, right? We know that's not healthy. But if you eat healthy fats, protein, lots of veggies, this could be a good plan for people. I find that men tend to lose more weight than women. It's one of those things. If you do try it, just watch for your body's response to it. I have eaten this way before. I found it really hard to get the right amount of fat because 75% of fat in your diet, that's a lot. So in order for me to make this make sense from a macronutrient standpoint, I had to make fat bombs out of cream cheese and butter, and that just didn't make sense. That didn't seem healthy. I did find that I lost some fat pounds, but I didn't lose much weight overall. So it's not how I eat currently. And that brings us to the paleo diet. So Paleolithic. Paleo diet is based on foods that our hunter-gatherer ancestors may have eaten. So these are basically whole meats, fish, fruits and vegetables, and nuts and seeds. It usually excludes processed foods, of course, and dairy and legumes. Though I would challenge that our ancestors may have had access to some dairy because the animals of that time would have been milk producing. But strictly paleo does not allow dairy. So the pros, there have been many clinical trials that show improvement in weight, waist circumference, blood pressure, insulin sensitivity, and triglycerides following a paleo diet. Another study found that it was the best among popular diets for decreasing inflammation, glycemic markers, and cholesterol. It's whole food focused. It's really minimally processed, and that's always good. It can be anti-inflammatory, and it does encourage cooking, making your own meals. So the cons, excluding dairy and greens, that might lead to some nutrient deficiencies. It can be hard to stick to long term. It does require some meal prep and planning. So it's not necessarily macronutrient balanced. So it can be high in fat or protein, or even in carbs if you're not careful. It's possible to overeat or cheat. There are lots of things we can make with almond flour that are technically paleo compliant, but they can be really high in calories. So I really want people to be cautious with if they make paleo treats with it. That's okay once in a while, but it should be considered a treat. It does eliminate processed food, processed food is almost never good. So I do like that. My opinion, I like paleo. I think it's a great place for somebody to start. I think it's easy to follow. I think there are lots of meal plans out there. My personal diet these days does include small amounts of dairy, but most days my choices are meats and vegetables. So it's kind of like a hybrid between paleo and keto. Next, I really want to talk about intermittent fasting. That's come up a couple times on our show already. A lot of the naturopaths love intermittent fasting, so I think it warrants more talking about. The definition of this type of plan, it's an eating pattern where you cycle between periods of eating and fasting. For example, you might go for 16 hours without eating and then eat within an 8-hour window. The focus is more on the timing of the eating, not necessarily the food type. So the pros, like I said, this is very popular right now. Studies have shown that intermittent fasting can boost insulin sensitivity and support metabolic flexibility. It therefore improves blood sugar control. It lets the body take a break from constantly eating. So that break just allows the gut to heal, to rest, and then the body's going to tap into stored fat, theoretically. Now, again, we talked about that pancreas. Every time we eat, the pancreas has to go to work. So by limiting the meals, this decreases the amount of insulin secretion and workload. This type of eating also encourages cellular renewal and repair. So periods of fasting will stimulate the natural cellular cleansing process, and that's going to promote overall cellular health. It may support longevity and decrease inflammation. Cells just naturally become damaged over time due to aging, environmental exposure. The damaged cells can become cancer cells or otherwise promote disease. So cleaning up those damaged cells is good for overall health. It also helps with appetite. People report less hunger, fewer cravings, and that helps weight loss over time. If we're eating less, in theory, we're going to lose weight. It reduces late night snacking. So by limiting that period of eating, you're not going to eat late at night. Usually your last meal is around 6 or 7. So most late night snacking is tied to overweight and obesity. So that's a good thing. And it's simple. You just eat within a certain window and you're done. So the cons. There is a female hormone expert called Stacey Sims, Dr. Stacey Sims. She has books out there. She's been on lots of podcasts. I do encourage listening to her because I think she's amazing. But she talks about women, and intermittent fasting on women can actually be a metabolic stressor. It can promote cortisol production, which can lead to fat storage. Most of the research on intermittent fasting has been done on men, so it's why some women just don't do as well on it. What I found is that when I try to engage in intermittent fasting, I've mentioned this before, I get really hungry. I get almost obsessed with when I can eat again. My sugar drops. It's just not good for me. But I will say I have a lot of people who do well on it. It's very important that if you are engaging in intermittent fasting, that you're getting enough protein. Because if we don't get enough protein, we can have our lean muscle loss. And we know that that's linked to illness of aging. Healthy aging really relies on us maintaining our muscle as we get older. Also, another potential con is after a period of fasting, people can have binging episodes, right? Because they feel deprived. Now, years ago, all the experts recommended breakfast. They said breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And we went by that. And since intermittent fasting has come along, they've said, no, maybe that's not true. But I will say earlier in my career, when we were talking about breakfast, many of my obese or overweight clients were skipping breakfast. And then their first meal of the day was quite large. They were also eating later into the night. And I think that's maybe why they weren't hungry in the morning. So again, I think there's a lot of merit to intermittent fasting, but I do think you need to proceed with caution. And if you do it, make sure you're getting good quality foods during that window of eating. And next, I really want to talk about plant-based eating. So this isn't something that I'm necessarily an expert in, but it comes up often. I have some clients that prefer to be plant-based, whether it's for health or for ethical reasons. So the definition of a plant-based diet: it's a diet centered mostly on plants, fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds. Some people will include a small amount of animal products, like eggs or cheese even. But if somebody is what's called vegan, that's very strict, and there is absolutely no animal product for those people. And even sometimes honey they won't eat because they feel that bees are maybe not treated appropriately. Most people who adhere to that type of diet feel very, very strongly about it. So if you ever have a conversation with a vegan about why they're a vegan, just respect them because they, like I said, they're very passionate about why they do what they do. Now, there are many health advantages to eating plant-based. It has been linked with lower rates of cardiovascular disease, less diabetes, and sometimes decreasing cancer risk. It's been shown to improve weight, cholesterol, and blood markers. It's high in fiber and antioxidants, and it can be lower in calories naturally. So most experts agree that vegetables are good for you. And there's one exception to that. There is a book called The Plant Paradox. So this was written by Dr. Stephen Gundry, and he is very popular among podcasts right now. He's all over Facebook, so you may have heard of him. And he does argue that certain plant foods contain lectins, and that's a type of protein found in the cell wall of the plant. So the purpose of this lectin is to protect the plant from predators. And so the theory is that if humans ingest lectins, it's going to promote inflammation in the gut and can cause leaky gut, certain autoimmune diseases. So the certain plants that are more likely to cause inflammation can be beans and grains and nightshades. So nightshades are things like eggplant, tomatoes, peppers. So I do worry about my plant-based friends. They run a risk of having gaps in nutrition in terms of B12, iron, omega-3 fatty acids. It also can be too low in protein, though there are lots of really high-quality plant-based proteins, but I feel like it's something that you have to pay close attention to. There are also some packaged foods that are vegetarian or vegan-friendly that can be heavily processed, and they're not necessarily healthy. Though if they have that vegetarian label, people might think they're healthy. So again, I want people to be cautious with that. So my opinion, it absolutely can be done. Many people have done it, but I do think that if you do it, make sure you're getting those other micronutrients and make sure you're getting your protein. I will say that people who struggle with weight just typically tend to be more carb sensitive. Plant-based diets tend to be higher in carbs naturally. So a lot of times people struggling with weight don't do as well on this, but again, it can be done. We're going to pause for a break from our sponsor. You're listening to Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Looking for expert care that helps helps you feel your best? Meet Shauna, lead practitioner at Amethyst Wellness. With a personalized approach to bioidentical hormones, weight loss, and aesthetic services, Shauna and the rest of the Amethyst Wellness team help you restore balance, boost energy, and feel confident inside and out.
At Amethyst Wellness, we take time to understand your goals. It's not one size fits all. It's a plan designed just for you.
Schedule your consultation today at Amethyst Wellness in Palm Coast. Your journey to total wellness starts here.
Welcome back to Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. I'm Dr. Amy Cooper-Smith, and before the break, we were talking about types of popular diet plans and the pros and cons. We talked about keto and paleo and plant-based eating. Now I'd like to just talk for a moment about my plan. What I did was took all this information and combined it into a guide for weight loss for my clients, and it's called Dr. Amy's Guide to Weight Loss and Wellness. So I mentioned before my personal eating habits, tend to be a hybrid between keto and paleo. It tends to be based on a good quality protein, vegetables, healthy fats. Each meal tends to have about 30 grams of protein. I feel that's very important for both weight loss and also maintenance of our muscle. It tends to be very balanced. It's very macronutrient balanced. I've done all that math, so you don't have to. Because of that, we don't have as many sugar crashes. Our blood sugar stays nice and stable where it needs to be. So we feel better on it. This plan is really simple. And a lot of people enjoy that because they don't have to think as much. My plan involves preparation. So with meal prep, the guide includes step-by-step instructions so you know exactly what steps to take to batch your meals. It takes a little bit of time up front, but then during the week when you're busy, your meals are made, you just grab it and go. You don't have to think about it. Everything has cons. This plan is kind of boring. You eat the same thing for several days in a row. And I'm not a chef, so these recipes were modified to make them macronutrient balanced and healthy. I plan in the future to do a collaboration with a chef and make them tastier because I think people would really like that. But overall, it is a good place to start, which is why we include it as part of our weight loss program at Amethyst Wellness. So now I would like to talk about some of the trends, some of the fads. People come in and they ask me, they heard about something on TikTok or they heard a friend try something and they ask my opinion. So I decided to do some research for the show just to see what we find out. So the first thing I want to talk about is the sugar diet. That's right. This is the opposite of keto. It is high carb, low fat, and low protein. In fact, up to 90% is going to be carbs in the form of fruits, grains, honey, and syrup. So on the podcast, this has been very popular with muscle builders. My husband, in fact, was listening to a podcast. He came running in and said, I've got a diet for me. It's called the sugar diet. And honestly, I thought it was a joke because these muscle builders are eating sugary cereal, donuts, and losing body fat. But other people, as they started to ask me about it, I said, okay, maybe there's something to it. So there is some science behind eating a diet high in sugar. And here it is. There is a hormone called the fibroblast growth factor 21. This is a hormone secreted from the liver, and it becomes elevated when you have a diet high in carbohydrate and also low in protein. This is going to regulate how the body burns fat. It enhances glucose uptake in the muscle, increases metabolic rate. It also makes you crave protein, but on this plan, you don't get to eat the protein. The cons. I couldn't find any real research to suggest that this is a good way of eating. Maybe it's just too new. It's not out there yet. But on the other hand, historically, eating things high in simple sugar, it's again going to make your pancreas secrete insulin, which is going to lead to highs and lows of your sugar and ultimately fat storage. Sugar also can be inflammatory and increase hunger. So normally before I give my opinion, I'll try a plan. My husband loves sugar and he did offer to test this for us, but in good conscience, I couldn't recommend it. But then I remembered that I actually inadvertently did this plan when I was in college in the 90s. So during the 90s, it was a very popular time for low fat. Everything was low fat, fat free, Snackwell cookies, reduced fat. So I ate cereal, rice, potatoes. I also ate fruits and vegetables. I ate very little protein and almost no fat. I thought I was being healthy. I couldn't understand why my weight was going up and I was really getting fat. At the time, I was in OC, and every month we had a PT test with weigh-in, and I would fail my weigh, and I'd have to get taped. And, when you're a girl and they tell you you're fat every month, it's not good. And again, I was convinced I was being healthy, and, I just couldn't understand it. It wasn't until when I met my husband and we were eating meat with every meal that I knew I had to cut back on some of those other things. And then somehow I just started losing weight, and I said, oh, too many carbs, not good. Why I think this can work for some people. Let's say we have somebody who's a muscle builder and they've been really strict and restricting carbs for a period of time. I do think it's possible when they reintroduce carbs that can cause a favorable response in their bodies. I would prefer to see people eating healthier carbs, like sweet potato, even regular potato fruit. I think that would be better than high fructose corn syrup, sugar-sweetened cereals. The people following this plan are also doing a lot of juices and things like that. When you have the juice and you remove the fiber from it, it's just going to really spike your sugar. It's really not the best way to consume your fruit. So for most people, please don't do this. Now, the carnivore diet is another one that's been talked about recently. So carnivore, an all-animal food diet consisting mostly of meat, fish, eggs, animal fat. It does exclude all plant foods and all grains. So the pros, it's very simple. It eliminates processed foods. It's tasty for your meat eaters. Some people report relief from autoimmune symptoms or digestive issues. And the high protein intake can help support your muscles. Now the cons, it's lacking in fiber. I really worry about constipation for somebody who's not eating any plants. I don't think that's very good for you. Also, there are a lot of micronutrients in plants that you're just not going to get from strictly meat. So again, it might lead to some nutrient deficiency. The long-term effects on gut health and heart health haven't been studied in this. It can be socially restrictive. And most experts, except for what we mentioned earlier, most experts believe we should eat vegetables. Long-term exclusion of plant foods could increase risk for nutrient deficiencies and chronic disease. I agree that most people should eat vegetables. If somebody does have inflammation, autoimmune disease, or, they might need to limit certain types of vegetables, like the nightshades we mentioned earlier, and do more leafy greens. Now, an exception, if you have someone that doesn't eat vegetables anyway, and we all know those people that they just won't eat vegetables, well, this might not be the worst plan for them because it is eliminating processed foods. So you're not having any junk food. I would definitely recommend a fiber supplement and vitamins if you're going to do this. But again, most people should probably do something a little more balanced. So the next one, this is a new one I just stumbled across in a podcast, and I thought it was interesting. So we're going to talk about the protein-sparing modified fast. So what this is a lower calorie, high protein diet designed for short-term but rapid fat loss while preserving lean muscle. So it's actually been around for many years. And the problem is we know now that if we go very low calorie, that eventually that's going to slow down metabolism. So there was a time when, obesity clinics were prescribing 500 calorie diets. That's just not sustainable. It's just not healthy for most people. So this particular plan can be low in calories on those particular days, but the way it's meant to be done now is just 2 days a week. So you wouldn't necessarily go into that starvation mode. That's the theory. So the pros, it can be highly effective for short-term fat loss. Because it's high in protein, you're going to preserve your lean muscle. It can help kickstart weight loss for people struggling, maybe after a vacation or some period of indulgence where we need to get that weight off. I think it could have some merit. So the cons historically, if your calories are too low, your thyroid function is going to slow down, and it's going to eventually slow down your metabolism. It can also increase cortisol response, which we know stores fat. It's very restrictive, so it may not be sustainable long term. We could run the risk of nutrient deficiencies, right? If it's not medically supervised. Now, I think because it's only a couple days a week, we should be fine with that as long as the other days are balanced and good. It can lead to rebound weight gain if we don't follow up with healthy maintenance. So again, short-term intervention, this could be something. I think it warrants more looking into. If you do it, please don't do it more than 2 days a week and for a set period of time. On those other days, I think it's really important to eat your protein and your vegetables and maybe a small amount of starch. I really like sweet potatoes as my starch source. They're just loaded with nutrients. Make sure you're hydrated and watch your body's response. If on your fasting days you're feeling very cold, very sluggish, that's probably your metabolism slowing down, and that might not be a good sign. I think short term, it might have potential. So I think we'll research more about this and follow back around. And the final fad diet we're going to talk about, it's not so much of a fad. It's called carb cycling. And this has been around for a while. It's very popular among bodybuilders. What the strategy is you alternate between high carb days and low carb days. So it's made to support fat loss while you're still having enough energy for your training. The pros, it supports your athletic performance, which is really important. You have to have some carbs to do what you want to do in the gym, but it's still promoting fat loss. It's flexible. It allows for those higher carb days, and you can kind of plan them around your higher intensity workouts when you need them. It might be psychologically easier than the lower carb diets. But the cons, it can be complicated, and it requires a lot of planning. Not necessarily best for the average person, but I do think it could work. And again, I would like people to choose higher quality carb sources. So that's a summary of some popular diets. I hope you all enjoyed it. So after all that, the question is, what should you eat? Well, it depends where you're starting. Good answer, right? So if you're eating a lot of processed foods, fast food, well, we know that's not good for us. So decrease or eliminate those foods. If you're drinking a lot of sugar-sweetened beverages, that's usually a good place to cut down or eliminate. Now, if you're already eating healthy and you're stuck, you're at a weight plateau, or you just don't feel great, then it's time to change things up. Take one of these plans, especially the ones that I felt were more favorable. If it makes sense to you, give it a try. Watch and see how your body feels. Now, if you're trying to lose weight, I highly recommend measuring your body composition with a body composition scale, because we want to make sure that you're losing fat pounds and not muscle pounds. We have it at our clinic, of course, at Amethyst Wellness, but a lot of your gyms are going to have these devices as well. So I think a lot of people do have access to it. If you want to try my plan, head over to my website, amethystwellness.com, and download the Dr. Amy's Guide to Weight Loss and Wellness. There you'll have meal prep guidelines, a protein cheat sheet, and lots of really great information. But remember, what works for one person might not work for another. Sustainability is the biggest factor. I recommend that rather than chasing fads, find a style of eating that supports your lifestyle and your long-term health. And when you find that, give it the does it make sense test. I want to thank everyone for listening to Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. If you have experience with any of these plans and want to share your insight, I really do want to hear it. Also, if there are other topics you want to hear about, please send me an email to radiantpodcast2025@gmail.com. Check out past episodes on Amethyst Wellness YouTube. And we are now also featured on Apple Podcasts and all your favorite platforms. So please subscribe and leave a 5-star review with a quick comment. It really helps, more listeners know about us. So I really appreciate you all. I'll be back next Saturday morning at 7:30 with more expert insights and practical strategies to help you live your healthiest, most energized life. Until then, stay healthy, and here's to your best life.